Okay, so today I'm going to deconstruct a 3-inch 1.3 or professional shell. And one thing about these, if you'll notice, they have little tags on them, and that indicates maybe who put it together or where it came from or something. If you look at some videos, you'll see them putting a little tag on at the very end, but that's a Chinese shell. This one is a color ring with white and green strobe pistil, and it's a 3-inch. And I told you earlier about the information that's usually on a shell, and we'll put this up and see if perhaps it'll pick it up. This shows where it's made, and I marked out the company that brought it into the country or ordered it, but it shows the date it was produced. It was made in China and where it was made, and it was by Fireworks. And so it always gives you all that information on each of the shells. And okay, so this one, the quick match, has a port for a electric match. It probably also has, well, I know it does, a piece of visco fuse if you elect to light it by hand. It also has a tail, and although the tail is made onto the shell, I'll remove that piece of tissue that just keeps the sparks from setting the tail off. But if you can see, the tail is basically, it's a star that has a mixture on top to help it light. So it's not really wired into the shell, so to speak, or fused into the shell. It is lit by the gases in the tube, and so that's what you'll see, the streak of light going up as the shell leaves the tube. And these are simply just glued in place, and so we can just cut that loose. And break it loose, and you can see the bottom of it is just a shell that's been glued on there. I mean, a star, excuse me, that's been glued on. I have no idea what the effect is, but it produces light as it goes up in the sky. Okay. Next, I'll go ahead and cut the lift loose, and that's what the cup will be at the bottom. It'll have our lift charge. It will show the quick match going down in it, and it will show the time fuse. And I'm simply going to cut around that. I'm trying to be careful in case it's loose, the powder's loose. Typically it's not loose, it's in a little bag, and that happens to be the case here. You can see that it actually has a little bag with the lift charge in it. And the time fuse goes, the quick match goes right down into the bag itself. So let's take that out. I'm actually going to pull that out of the little bag so we can weigh and see how much powder they have in here. So let's weigh that up. That's 36 grams, so there's 36 grams of lift charge for that 3-inch shell. The quick match is nothing special about that, except you can see that the end of it is exposed. And one thing that you might find surprising, I'm going to go ahead and cut that loose and set it aside. There's actually 2 time fuses in these, and that's pretty typical of the shells from China. They'll put 2 time fuses in there, I guess as a backup. And I'm not sure exactly what kind of glue they use on here. It's not hot glue, but it's some sort of a really hard glue that they put around here to seal it, keep the gases from going into the shell. Now when I disassemble this, I know from experience that the ring is going to be just that. It'll be a ring of stars around here, and there's probably not going to be a keeping it all together as I break it apart. There's usually no good way to slide anything in between the shell halves, but I'll just try to quickly open it, and maybe we'll keep most of it intact. So I'm simply going to note, well, I know first of all that around the hemisphere should be the crack in the shell halves. So I'll just cut around there with my blade carefully and try to cut through the layers to expose the inside. And this may take a minute, so I'll try to take my time. Okay, so I've cut around the hemisphere. I know that it's loose. And one thing I meant to show you before, or comment on, the end of the time fuses will have that dried slurry mixture. And I believe this maybe has cross match in there. It's hard to tell with all the slurry mixture, but they assure that it will light as the lift charge goes off. Okay, so I'm going to try to pop this open fairly quickly. We'll see what happens. Let's see if I can zoom in a little more here. Okay. And I'm pretty sure it's got it all loose there. Let's see if we can pop it open quickly. Okay, so no need in this case. You can see what I have here is they've actually put the burst charge in tissue. And so that means we didn't have to worry about it all falling apart as it came apart. So let's gently lift that off. And you can see the ring around there is actually the ring of stars, is the ring part. And let me set this down here a second. And we'll look inside the tissue. Okay, so this is rice hulls, and it also contains little stars. So, can you see that? I believe you can. So it's the rice hulls and little stars. A little unusual. Usually you'll have the stars loose in here and the charge in the middle. Okay, so also this has a little piece of tissue, probably the same thing. It's probably got some powder coated rice hulls, and it probably has some stars in it. So let's lift these stars out. Remember, these are actually the ring. It's just one row of stars around it that form the ring when it explodes. So we'll just take all these out. And this is on the upper end of the size of stars that you typically have in a 3-inch, and that's simply because of the ring. And this is probably 3/8-inch stars. And of course the smaller stars, they're smaller than a 1/4 inch that are actually in with the rice hulls. Okay, so that leaves this tissue paper. And let's unwrap it. And just as I suspected, it has rice hulls, and it also has small stars in it. Okay, so let's lift that out of there. And the bag is busted a little bit there, and so it's left a little bit loose in the bottom. Let's dump that in here. And you can see the time fuse coming up inside the shell. So unlike what I did earlier on the 4-inch shell, where I used a spilette to get it up in the center of the shell, they just simply have 2 going up in there. And that gives it twice the fire, I guess. And once again, this has a multiple thickness of wrap around it. So you can see that the shell started off a lot smaller. Let me grab a 3-inch. A standard 3-inch Hemi, you could see, would be like that. So they put quite a bit of wrap around that. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I mean, typically you'll have stars in some formation, and like I said, usually like I did with the 4-inch shell, you put a single layer around. But in this case, with the stars, they just simply put them in with the break. And so those is a combination of white and green strobe stars. So like I said, there's no way of knowing which is which, but that's what we have. So pretty simple shell, and it's very typical the way these are made in China. So that's it. Next I'll go in probably do a 4-inch or larger with a different effect. All right, see you in the next video.